as we have people coming in, we're just going to be a little bit more patient. This training does go till 1:30. Is that correct, Cindy? Yep. All right. So it is already recording. Fantastic. As people come in, again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank my co-conspirators for being here as well. And we're going to start with a round of uh, introductions here. I think that we'll kind of start working our way around. We'll do mine. And again, today's session, just to be clear, is a train the trainer session, which means we're not here to do the presentation for you. We're here to answer any and all of your questions so you can do the training to whoever it is you're facilitating to. So I really hope for a lot of engagement. We're going to show you some of the materials. We're going to send links in the chat for the materials. We're going to show you the types of polls that we're going to do. Doesn't necessarily mean that you want to do it. The whole point is when I do the presentation, it has my flair and my sort of attitude behind it. When you facilitate the training, it's got to have yours. Otherwise, that's what makes it the most authentic. So as we begin, first of all, my name is Don Shapira. I am a former co-chair, and I am the lead trainer at Conflict Resolution Day. This is our 17th year, or as Chris says, our 17th season of doing this. And we've done different trainings throughout the 17 years. The last 4 or 5 years was sort of meant to be done as a series. This year, just considering it's an election year, considering a lot of the escalated political climate, we thought that having this topic be about conflict, roadmap to peace, about how can we actually talk about the things that we're told we should never ever talk about, whether it be religion or politics or war or sexuality, whatever those things are. The purpose of this training is to give you the tools to be able to talk about those things without escalating a conflict. So that's the purpose of today's training. And it is my pleasure and we'll just start with you, Chris, as the co-chair, the current co-chair of the Conflict Resolution Day Committee. So Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us over your lunch hour for the next hour and a half. Really grateful for your participation. My name is Chris Menzies. I work in employee engagement. And my role this year is I'm co-chair, and I share that really honor that responsibility with my cohort, Cindy, who's really the brains behind the operation. I just show up and smile every now and then. And I think I have a nicer mustache. I do have a nice mustache.
I hope so.
And so we're here. We're here this afternoon, as Don had mentioned, where this is a conflict resolution day is a process. It's an evolution over the last 17 years. Hard to believe that we're already, that we're 17 years since the inception. We've learned a lot in the last number of years. This presentation, to Don's point, is an evolution to where we are now. There's a lot happening in the world. We're really interested in helping people to have good relationships and evaluate those relationships and engage in conversations with people that they love or other people that that are maybe their neighbors or they share the space with, about conversations and topics that are kind of challenging. So just want to give some tools for folks to be able to reflect on how to engage in those conversations and be curious. So welcome. Thanks again for coming. And maybe I'll pass it over to my cohort, Cindy. Cindy.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks, Chris. I am Cindy Impola, and I am this year's co-chair. I can't believe we're in the 17th season. Wow, wow, wow. I hope we get another run next year. Just kidding. I am a conflict practitioner and a human resources practitioner in the field of public education. So I see a lot of opportunity for the communication skills that are unraveled by the CR day work in use every day. So that is my dream and hope, that all of this gets used by an everyday person like us. So welcome to the session. Look forward to CR Day in October. So I hope that you are all able to facilitate and want to keep spreading the word with us. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Janine.
Thank you. Little difficult to follow all of those. I will let you know that this is my first year. My name is Janine Fraser. I am also a mediation practitioner, primarily in the area of trauma and high conflict, as well as restorative justice. I will say that last year I was a participant. And I thoroughly enjoyed last year's presentation, and it made me want to be a part of the committee. And thankfully, everyone here allowed me to be a participant as well as on the committee. So I'm really hoping that others will be as inspired as I am. So welcome, thank you, and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Janine. And there are obviously, this is not the whole committee. There's a lot of other members and volunteers. And if you are interested in having your fingerprints on next year and beyond's training, please also let us know. We're always looking for new members to try and revitalize our ideas and really promote Conflict Resolution Day and have it be even bigger than it currently is. So a few years back, we had the opportunity to have this, or I guess the October Conflict Resolution Day, which lands on the third Thursday of October every year, as part of the ADRIC National Convention or conference, which was great. So that helped some word of mouth. And I think that that's really helped. And we've grown every year since. So again, this year, we also have a lot of materials. Now, where do these materials come from? And it's also important to kind of digest that. We didn't just make these up. So I took the conflict resolution program at Cornell University and then adapted those materials for the corporate mediation and team building that Fresh Start Mediation does. Then we took those materials and readapted them for this particular talk and for this particular training. So this is vetted, tried and tested materials that you now have access to, which is great because it gives you sort of that extra legitimacy as you're training. Now, again, the purpose of today is to go through the PowerPoint deck, show you some of the videos, why we found them to be important, and also, above all else, is to hear your feedback. We have about a month before Conflict Resolution Day begins, and we have had a lot of feedback where even I remember a couple of years back we did some pretty big changes in the last few weeks. So we are ready to be very responsive to your comments, and we look forward to it. So without further ado, I'm going to begin by sharing my screen, and I hope I share the right screen. Not that there's anything bad on the other ones. I guess actually first, before we do that, we should acknowledge one thing. The website conflictresolutionday.ca has changed. Okay, so we're going to be discussing with the DRN, the Dispute Resolution Network, which will explain what that is in a moment, how to fix this. But the domain is conflictresolutionday.weebly.com, and we're going to enter that into the chat. So it used to be without the Weebly, but we just need to fix that domain. So please go here. This is where all the materials are. You'll be able to see in the resources right here, and the resources will be in here as well for you to be able to just click on and download as well. This is the deck. Now, the way I split my screen is I actually have two screens, so I'm able to have the presentation on one and my notes on the other. And the notes, these are the notes that we have. The notes for each slide it's quite robust. All the links are on there. So if your link doesn't work, we'll still have it be able to go through. Basically, this is the screen that you want to kind of have on, waiting for when the webinar begins. That's exactly what we're going to do. You can add your name, the organization name that you're doing this on behalf. Now, the primary purpose and the primary involvement of Conflict Resolution Day is that this training is for free. It is accessible to anybody who wants it. And that's the point of Conflict Resolution Day and why we have so many NGOs and sort of oversight to ensure that it remains that way. So you want to do a little bit of housekeeping at this point. You, again, like me, I'm asking for as much participation and feedback as humanly possible. And it really depends on your facilitating style, on your training style. Would you prefer to just go through, answer questions at the end? Perfect. Or as you kind of practice, every 3 or 4 slides, say, are there any questions? Is there any discussion point? We also have some polls that we're going to be doing. We're also going to have some worksheets that we're going to be introducing and giving people the opportunity to fill them out, especially if it's done in person. Now, before we kind of go forward, I invite Janine to do our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Dawn. I really appreciate it. So it's my honor to present a land acknowledgement on behalf of the Conflict Resolution Day Committee. I acknowledge that what is now called Alberta is the traditional and ancestral territory of many peoples, subject to Treaty 6, 7, and 8. This includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, Stoney Nakoda, Tsuut'ina, and the Métis people of Alberta. This encompasses the Métis settlements and the 6 regions of the Métis nations of Alberta within this historical Northwest Métis homeland. I'm grateful for the traditional knowledge, keepers, and elders who guide us today and have guided us in the past. I present this acknowledgement as a personal commitment to reconciliation, as an expression of gratitude to those whose territory we are on or visiting. I'm dedicated to continuously learning and supporting reconciliation efforts, striving to understand colonization and address the ongoing impacts. This commitment involves exploring my own privilege and the experience and amplifying the success and achievements of my Indigenous peers, colleagues, and friends. I am deeply devoted to honoring and respecting the Indigenous peoples, supporting their efforts to repair and strengthen relationships between settlers and Indigenous persons. Thank you for joining the Conflict Resolution Day Committee in this acknowledgement and our commitment to reconciliation.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jane.
Thank you.
In terms of land acknowledgements, there's also one that we have here in the notes that you can use. Obviously, if you have one of your own, as you can see, Janine curated hers. If there's one that you would prefer, you know, the land acknowledgements, I think, do come more from the heart, so it should be representative of you. So a little bit about Conflict Resolution Day. Some of you already know this. We'll go over this briefly. So again, this is part of various departments of the government of Alberta and not-for-profit organizations throughout the province. This did begin, actually, I don't even know where Conflict Resolution Day was initially inspired. I don't think it was inspired by us here in Alberta. Was it, Cindy?
No, it's actually international, so not us.
It's in, well, I just thought we made it international because that's what we do. So Conflict Resolution Day has been going on for a very, very long time, but a bunch of very smart people got together and said we should have one as a committee to promote this training for people Alberta-wide. If you do have any more questions about the Alberta Conflict Resolution Day Committee or about the DRN or about the NGOs that are a part of this, please email us. What is a good email to email us at, Cindy? Oh, you're just on mute?
4 years later, I'm still doing that.
That's right.
I'll put our normal email in the chat, but it's info@conflictresolutionday.ca.
And again, any questions that you have throughout this presentation or afterwards, you can just email us or ask away during. So what is the session overview? You know, one of the big things that we try to do here in understanding where conflict can really escalate is that, are we actually defining words the same? So we have carefully defined what conflict is to us. We have carefully defined certain words And therefore, we're able to use that sort of foundation to then build up any further conversation, right? So we have to come to agreement on what those definitions are. So throughout the notes, you will see we go through and we define certain things. A lot of you know about the conflict management style inventory. We have questions that we've put together for it, makes it a little bit more generalized, a little bit quicker as well to go through. We talk about self-reflection, preparation, triggers, reactions, which in discovering, and I think that one of the neat things as we were talking about this and having so many different views and input, is that we were able to recognize that triggers and reactions would can encompass a training in and of itself. And I do believe that we've already started kind of having our brains work on what next year's presentation is going to be. And it's going to be a little bit more about how, safety and triggers. Positions, interests, outcomes, and impacts, and preparing for engaging in a difficult conversation. We do have sort of an 8-step plan for that. And we'll walk you through those materials. So we have a great video. I guess I could show it. The link is down here. Here we go.
While Don is loading the link, we also have, so this video is tailored for an adult audience. We also have a second video that would be more suitable for a youth audience. And that link is available in the notes section.
Editing software.
Now, one of the things, again, that you might want to do is have your videos ready to go already in the links, and then you can just sort of alt tab into them. Okay. But let me just make sure that video and audio is optimized for the share, optimized for video clip. There we go. So as you can see, this video does go on for quite a bit longer. It's fantastic in being able to promote the idea that we're trying to promote. And that idea is sometimes when you just say, actually, let me do this. Sometimes when you just say a statement, are you sure that they mean what you think it means? So everything requires that, of course, I'm now sharing the wrong thing. So this usually goes a lot smoother, so I do apologize. It goes on and it's quite good. Now, we also have a different video, but as you can see, the spirit behind that video is to say, just because somebody says something, we immediately sort of go to how it either connects us or at how it separates us. And sometimes, and obviously, it's much, much more nuanced. So then we get into the conflict styles quiz. Now, this quiz will be available to you, like we said. The link is right here. It's going to be shared right now in chat. And again, just also jump in, Chris, Cindy, or Janine, if there's anything that you want to add, if I'm missing something. The way that we're going to do it on Conflict Resolution Day, we're just going to give people a few minutes and we're just going to be chatting in between ourselves, just to kind of go through. People may fill it out or may not fill it out. We explain in full what each one is. I'll show you what that is, but the instructions are right here in your notes. We make sure that you're fully prepared as you go through. Then we show how to total everything up. And then as we kind of go through, we then explain the difference between, and these words are sort of synonymous, right? We have assertiveness and the goal. Those words are synonymous for us. And cooperativeness and the relationship. Those two words are synonymous for us. And as we explain assertiveness and cooperativeness, we interchange that with goal and the relationship. And we use, we had the help of a little bit of ChatGPT as well as we kind of constructed this. We had sort of one script that was available, and we decided to clean it up as we do. But we go through and explain what competing is. So, for example, competing, and again, for those of you who are very familiar with the conflict styles inventory, I don't want to get into too much detail, but if you do have questions or if this is the first time you're introduced to it, I will go into more depth. So just please let us know in the Q&A. But the biggest thing, and one of the most important things that I like and that I use in my script when I talk about the competing is that that means that you are focused solely on the goal and almost nothing on the relationship. So you're very, very assertive and not being very cooperative. Now, to put that in somebody's mindset, that I know a person like that, we don't want people to do that. Because this is not about who your personality is. This is about the strategy that you're using during this particular conflict. And that's a very important separation that we need to make. Now, a lot of people might use competing more than others. That's fair. But where do these come from? And this is where an interesting discussion can kind of originate. The discussion is, where do we learn these behaviors? How can we change these behaviors? What tools do we need? And that's what we sort of provide as this lesson continues. Because one of the things about competing that I think is a wonderful way to look at it from the other person's perspective. So if you're in a conflict with somebody and somebody's behaving in a competing strategy, you can do one of two things. One, I think this is our sort of default without training, is they don't care about me. Or two, because now we have this training, we know it's a strategy, we can reflect, we can reassess, and we can thoughtfully respond and say, well, maybe this particular item or this particular thing is more important to this person than I previously believed. And it's that ability to make that switch. And so we talk about the values, we talk about the benefits of this type of strategy, the drawbacks, and for everyone. We talk about the values that are involved, and we try and get into a discussion about that. So in this one, for example, honesty is one of the values. And as you can see, for each one, avoiding, we talk about the benefits and we talk about the drawbacks. We talk about, again, harmonizing or accommodating, benefits, drawbacks, compromising, and so forth. And then we show it in that cool little chart there, in that little graph, right? Competing, you're very much on the assertive and on cooperative, or again, assertive is goal, cooperativeness is the relationship. Collaborating or accommodating, you're focused much more on the relationship as opposed to the goal. And so that's a cool way to do it. And again, the notes here are fantastic, and I think Chris, you put this together. It's about, we now engage, especially if it's done via YouTube. So for example, this is the story that we did on ChatGPT about all the different personalities. Now we call them personalities just for this scenario, going into McDonald's and how each one would react. And then we ask, specific questions. In this scenario, this is what happened. Where do they fall? Are they more competing, collaborative, compromising, etc.? So that gives that opportunity. Chris, I know you were a little bit more involved in this one. This one, and I think that, Chris, when we were talking about this, one of the big things was, if you take nothing else away from the training and only this, and only wrap your head around this concept, fundamentally every relationship you've ever had is going to be better.
Yeah, and like, just to reinforce what Donna is saying, that these are strategies that we all employ in certain scenarios. Sometimes we are more competitive in an event, or we're more accommodating. And it also really depends on the relationship. And as we'll get into a little bit later, how we value the relationship. If it's a really important relationship, like a parent-child relationship, we would use a different strategy than if we were looking at a relationship with somebody that is sharing the street with us in traffic, for example. So just really this is a great opportunity to get creative with engaging your audiences, and an opportunity to kind of share some and reflect on where we might employ those strategies in our daily lives, in our professional lives and personal lives.
Right. And I think that that's a really good point that you make. And it really depends on how much reading you do and how much more you want to delve into each topic. Because if you're a specialist in this, dig right deep into it. Spend more time on this than maybe some of the other materials, but kind of time yourself. Because, I think, Chris, one of the points that you made, and is sort of a hobby, is for me is, game theory, right? And you just kind of mentioned, one thing that we all talked about is being empathic and always using these strategies and always being focused on that. It is mentally exhausting. So do you always have to employ these things? Well, I mean, you got to take a look if it's a short game or a long game. Short game, somebody you only have an interaction with once in your life, you're able to just walk away and not really worry about it. But if it's a long-term relationship, maybe it's a better idea to focus some of that energy there. Do you think that it's should I read the McDonald's? Yeah. Just so this is the basic story. To shine a light on the various conflict styles, let's consider a hypothetical situation at a local McDonald's restaurant. This is brought to you by ChatGPT. At a bustling McDonald's during lunch hour, the atmosphere is lively with people eager to get their meals. In the middle of the commotion, 5 individuals stand out, each displaying a distinct personality or strategy as they navigate their ordering process. First in line was Jack. He's a business person. He's dressed sharply in a suit. He pushed ahead, his eyes fixed on his watch, and he goes, "I'll have a Big Mac, large fries, and a Coke." "Make it quick. I have a meeting in 10 minutes," he demanded. His tone brisk. The cashier, unfazed, officially took his order, knowing the type well. Now, what is that type? Is that a strategy that is competing, collaborating, compromising, and that's how we can get engagement. Now you can either do that as, oh, we have somebody who would like to guess. Lisa? In chat? Right? And that's basically how it works. You can have them raise their hand. You can have a poll pre-pop up. It really depends on your, first of all, technological acumen, and 2, what you feel comfortable with. When it's done in person, or if you were to do this in person, much, much easier, right? And of course, we have the answers here as well. So let's move on to triggers and reactions, because at this point, I think, is where we really got stuck. We have to discuss it, but
Don.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but Lisa does have a question. She's just working on getting her microphone unmuted.
I think that's done by the host only.
Then that's me.
Correct.
Participants allowed to talk. All right, Lisa, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you're very quiet.
It's
Okay, is that better?
much better.
Okay, great. My comment, well, it was a question more than anything, and it was about the preceding slides where it identifies the collaborating, competing, all of those things. And I saw on the write-up, and the information was presented pretty quickly. So I want to make sure that, maybe you have provided this, but is the purpose of this just to identify what that person is, or is it also to give them a potential strategy in communicating better with that person? And I'm thinking more of the competing style. When you have someone who's an avoider, communicating with a competing style, it can be very intimidating. And it's just about like when, it's maybe even if you can't specifically speak to it, having a little bullet or something saying, this is a way to engage them, whether you're competing, avoiding, what have you. I just think it might be something nice because it's fine to identify what it is, but I think even better if we can give a strategy to engage productively with that style.
That's a really good comment, Lisa, and really good observation. At this juncture in the presentation, we're asking the audience to do a self-reflection. So they're gonna complete the conflict management style quiz, and they'll get a dominant result, and it'll be one of the 5. But there'll be components of each, right? So there'll be one of the 5 different strategies. But the idea is to say like, okay, well, if I employ this strategy in this scenario, does that mean that I'm always competing? Like that doesn't necessarily mean that, but it's to build awareness that these strategies are just in fact that they're not necessarily the default only exclusive way that we approach conflict, but instead they're an option in a suite of options that we may use in a specific scenario. And then in the later slides, as Don will demonstrate and explain very thoughtfully, it's really about anticipating, and to your point, planning how to proceed with the conversation if the person that you're in conflict with exhibits one of those 5 strategies. Now, please, Don, Janine, Cindy, please expand on that if I missed anything or.
Yeah, I do want to piggyback off that, Chris, because there's a couple things there. There's no such thing as an avoiding person and a competing person. These are strategies that are used at different points. And at certain points, let's say my dominant is competing, I might use avoiding as a strategy at certain points. And there's an evaluation that goes on there. The real purpose of this is to say that every conflict is way, way more nuanced than we've ever believed it to be. And so when we enter a conflict, and if you're taking nothing else away from the training, it's that we have to transition ourselves from emotional triggers and reactions into thoughtful responses. So it's about how we take a look at conflict as its own animal, and then be able to reflect on those. So what this does is when we're in a conflict, if we're able to go, oh, I wonder what conflict style they're using, you're now you're not as emotionally invested in the words that they're using. So it's no longer that this person against me. We're now able to take a look at the problem is over there. The problem is not the other person. That's the main goal throughout the whole session. If we were to encapsulate it in that. Does that make sense, Lisa?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that idea. And I think as practitioners, we get that, I think, at a different level than maybe others who are on the receiving end of this information. So I'm always trying to look at what are some practical takeaways for people who are participating in this who may not, who are just dealing with an emotional reaction and they're not intellectualizing the information like I think we are doing. So it's yeah, I think I totally get what you're saying, Don, and I appreciate it and I understand it. And I also, it's nice to have just a couple of maybe practical things
100%.
at the end to do.
Yeah, no,
so thank you.
Yeah, 100%, Lisa, and that's a very valid point. And what we're going to be doing now is walking them through, right?
Yeah,
So
great.
we've introduced something, and it's also, Lisa, how you set the table, right? So when you talk about these conflict management styles or that inventory, you can set the table saying these are just styles. You are not this type of so it also depends on your facilitation, right? So set the table, and then I think that you'll have a little bit more insight into the full docket of materials that we have as we go through the rest of the presentation. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a great question. So let me go back to sharing my screen here. So, and again, depending on where you feel more comfortable in the presentation, we kind of expect you to maybe focus a little bit more time on that, right? Because anything that, from all the trainings that we've done, it's that one kernel that somebody keeps, right? And so that's why we do it every year, is just trying to add to that kernel. Now going back to the triggers and the reactions and that sort of switch over to response. And I think that's where we were ready to just kind of continue on. Like, Chris and I were talking when we got pretty excited about this topic initially, and we're like, oh, let's talk about politics. Let's talk about this. And it looked much different than it does now. And then Janine, as again, that new member coming in and saying, well, I think that we really need, and this is your background, Janine, and you talked about, well, we kind of need to address the trigger and safety portion, and then how it fit really well into that reaction versus response that we're trying to get people to was great. So I'll speak about that for a couple seconds, Janine.
Okay, I would love to. One thing that I think, when we're in conflict or when we're going to be those mediators or the like in the conflict is staying cognizant of our words and how those words might actually have some triggers for other people. They might have different meanings for other people. And to ensure that when you are doing this type of work, that you circle back, you're inquisitive and understanding, if this is indeed a trigger, and don't be afraid to ask. And you don't have to use the word trigger, but rather you can use, I noticed this, or am I understanding correctly? this will keep for many of us who talk about psychological safety, it'll be keeping that safe space for those individuals. And then again, thus making the process a lot smoother, safer, and being able to proceed to your resolution. Hope that makes sense.
100%, 100%. And so we do address that. And again, one of the things that was also important to us is to say that this topic is very, very important. It's very, very big. And so we're going to focus next year's training on triggers, reactions, and safety. This is a cool thing. This is something just over the last couple of months, as we talked about it, we thought about how to fit this in, and I think it fits in really well. So we talk about, those two famous quotes, one by Ben Shapiro: "Facts don't care about your feelings." And then the truth of the matter is a fact never wins an argument. So no matter how thoughtful and logical we are, we also have to work within the constraints of who we are as human beings. So that was a really neat thing. So we did, there's a couple of videos here, but one put together by our fabulous Brit from Adria, and we'll show you that video. But, the way I'm starting it is saying, here's an example, okay? Diamonds are actually worthless. De Beers has a cartel-like hold on diamonds, and only through the use of sentimental and emotional marketing in the 1940s did people start buying these rare gemstones. The truth is, diamonds are worthless intrinsically. They're as common as a rock, perhaps only good as an efficient saw due to its hard surface. But they are neither rare nor are they valuable. Okay, so now, is everybody going to throw away their diamonds? Right? So it's that, we know this to be true, but still we're going to pay, I think it's 3 months salary on a gemstone when we get engaged, because that's the expectation. So that's the fact, but does it really change our behavior? And so I'm going to show this video. That again, this was adapted from a video. We do acknowledge that. The reason we adapted it was because we felt there might be some troubling language in the original, or troubling concepts. Again, we do address that. I also do encourage you to see the original, and if you enjoy that more, again, this is up to you and your comfort level. We just felt that we should recreate this footage. So let me get this ready for you.
If you spent any
Oh, so I have the original here.
The chat has the link, Don.
The chat has the link. Perfect. Okay. So yes, the one in the PowerPoint links you to the original, and the one that Cindy just shared points you to the redone version, and here it is.
If you spent any time on Earth, you might have noticed that humans are not the most rational creatures. We make decisions based mostly on emotions instead of facts, and a lot of times we're guided by group instincts. Part of the problem is that the human brain evolved to help us survive, and not necessarily to help us be factually accurate. So, we often respond better to social and group dynamics than to intellectual analysis. For example, if someone's social group believes that Obama is a secret Muslim born in Kenya, that person probably thinks the hard proof of his US birth certificate is fake. That conclusion is neither rational nor accurate, but from a group perspective, it makes sense. It's safer to agree with your group and stay united ideologically, even if you're wrong about the facts, than to disagree and isolate yourself. Another part of the problem is that our brain is constantly protecting our worldview and sense of identity. So, when our worldview is challenged, the same part of the brain that processes physical danger gets activated. This is why people sometimes react so aggressively to information that proves them wrong, and why it's often so hard to have an intelligent political debate. Several studies have also shown that there is a backfire effect that happens when people encounter facts that contradict their current beliefs. They actually become more convinced of their original ideas. So, fighting ignorance with facts is like fighting a grease fire with water. It seems like it should work, but it actually just makes the whole thing worse. Lastly, there's the problem of lack of empathy. Several studies have found that when humans are divided into groups of any kind, we instinctively become less empathetic to members of other groups. That means that for survival's sake, we may instinctively empathize less with other races, nationalities, and even other sports teams. This instinctive dehumanization of other groups is what makes things like genocide possible in our society. So, what can you do if you want someone to consider factual information that clashes with their beliefs? First, you have to prevent their brain from seeing you as a personal threat. Look for ways to identify the person as a part of your group and you as a part of theirs. Hey, we're part of the same family. Hey, we're both parents. Hey, we both still play Pokemon Go. Whatever it is, anything that communicates that you're part of the same group is the first step. Second, consider the possibility that you may be wrong. Maybe the facts are not on your side, in which case admitting it will help you model to the other person that it's okay to be wrong. I understand that none of this is easy or smooth, but if we want to continue to function as a stable society, we have to learn to get past our own natural biases. Only when that happens will we be able to move forward towards a better future.
So we can start seeing the effectiveness of it. Again, what we're doing here is we're building a story. We're trying to bring everybody to a certain point. And now we start getting into the actual materials. So now what we want to do, and again, these documents are going to be available for you. We want to start talking about what are your triggers, right? Write down the triggers that you are experiencing in this conflict, but then we're going to throw in, what your reactions are, right? So what is your immediate reaction? What that automatically does is it gets you out of your emotional state and into a thoughtful state. Because now you have to reflect. Anytime that you have the opportunity to reflect at any point in a conflict, it calms you down. Because now you're in a thoughtful process. You might even double down and say, I'm right because of this, this, or this, but then you're able to read it. What it does, it just gives you that time, right? A reaction is an emotional sort of stimulus, like it happens. It's instinctual. We're removing that base instinct by having them go through even just one step. Just write something down. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
So this is just that we have if I'm not mistaken, we have a worksheet that will help folks to reflect on this particular slide, and what we can, and just building on what we talked about previously, like this can be all those conflict styles, thinking about our potential reaction to a situation that would trigger or elicit the behavior that aligns with one of those strategies. So if somebody interrupts us in a line at McDonald's, do we have an avoidance posture or do we get competitive? And basically, this is a self-reflection, and the purpose of this is to prepare us for the types of questions or comments that we may encounter during the difficult conversation that we're planning for in future slides.
I hope you don't, I'm just going to interject. One thing I've heard Chris mention a couple of times is preparation. This will prepare you. I hope he continues to stress that, because the more that we prepare and the more that we practice, the easier that this becomes. Sorry, I just wanted to point that out, Chris, that you're making a really good point.
Right. All those former athletes out there, practice like you're in a game and play like you're in practice. Those are very, very important. And again, we get back into the sheet, right? So now we're trying to find out what your position was, right? Again, we know that everything we do is about interest-based. So we got to shift into interests. But to do that, we have to understand what the position was. I want this. Why do you want that? But now we're adding that element of empathy. Here's my position. Okay, outline your initial position. Perfect. But now outline what you consider the other party's initial position to be. Now that's that first time we're like, where are they coming from? We're trying to understand and empathize. It's that forced empathy piece. as now we start introducing interests, those are those underlying needs and desires, those concerns or motivations that led someone to take that particular position in the first place. We start introducing that. Now, how do we uncover those interests? Right? We have the acronym CHEAP and BFN. Right. Again, the information is here. The sheets are here. If you want us to go into more detail at this train the trainer session, we can. It is fairly self-evident here, right? What are your concerns? What are your hopes? What are your expectations, assumptions, perceptions? Those, they just open up a whole new level of discussion, as opposed to it's either Trudeau or Polyev. Right, or Singh, or whoever it may be, right? Like it's more than just, it's what are your concerns. Now it's no longer a binary. Now we can really empathize, and what I find is, even with the people that are on complete polar opposites of the spectrum of any conflict, they agree on so much more than they disagree with. So it's fascinating. So the whole point here, and again, from shifting from reaction to response, we try to sum it up in one word or in two words: get curious. Right? And if you're able to get curious as opposed to involved, right, and is like to have a stake, because one of the things that was great about that video that Britt redid is you're able to now look at a conflict as it separates itself from you. And that's an important aspect. And again, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just that in addition to the video that Britt did, as you'd observed, Don, it also ties into the video that we shared at the very beginning. So one of the contestant in the game show, for instance, in the SNL skit, made a statement, and the follow-up were that the game show participants followed up with questions because they were curious to learn more. And that, rather than just defaulting to the assumption, the point here is that we've got to be curious about the interests of the other party.
Right. And that, I think, is why I love that sketch so much, is because they show you the right thing, right? They're asking the question. And now you understand that if the question is answered, you now have way more information to be able to understand, as opposed to just making that judgment. Right. So once you go through the training, another good idea is maybe re-show that video from the very, very beginning. Say, where did they go right and where did they go wrong? Right. What was the fault here? Because they did show empathy. They did show, well, are you buying stuff from a farm because you want to or because you have to? Like, those are two very, very different things, right? Why is Facebook evil? Two very, very different things, depending on the answer. So you really get to understand somebody. Again, we have, and I'm sure many of you have seen these types of slides. You can also interchange some of this information with other materials that you feel comfortable with. The point is, let's keep the script to where we want, right? So we use this: interests, uncovering values, needs, motivations. So what are your interests, right? Are they achievement, acknowledgement, understanding, privacy, whatever it is? Right, there's something that's more underlying, right? I love the orange story, as you can tell. Everything here is orange, and it's that whole idea of to really break it down. You have an orange, both the only ones left, two people want it. So what do people typically do? They just cut it in half. What do we do, and what do we promote? We ask, why do you want the orange? And one person will say, I want to eat it, and the other person says, I need the zest. And so now you can create, just by asking one additional question, an optimal solution for both, as opposed to one that's only 50%. That's the compromise. Everybody gets 50%. This is ADR. Everybody gets 100%, right? Then we go back to the worksheet. Now we start talking. We've introduced interest. What are your interests? And again, we're now blatant. What's yours? What's theirs? Right? We are now taking empathy as the presumption. Right? Go through which of these are most important to you and why. And now we reflect, no judgment, reflection on why we believe those are accurate for the other. Right?
So Lisa observed in the chat, asking if there's a list, and Cindy is on it. Cindy, you're just an athlete. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we start talking about conflict outcomes and considering impacts, right? The win-win, everybody's heard of the win-win, lose, and things like that. We spend a little bit of time on this, to be honest. There is a really cool thing that William Ury did. Now, William Ury obviously wrote that book, Getting to Yes. As far as I'm concerned, it is the Bible of interest-based negotiation and understanding. But he had this really cool bit, and I do this every single time I get to do a presentation in person. If there's 30 people or more, what you do is you tell everybody to match up, and you have them say, okay, we're gonna have an arm wrestling contest. And I'm sure some of you have seen this, and if you haven't, try it. It's amazing how effective this is. So these are the rules. Okay, there are 15, if there's 30 people, there's 15 arm wrestling matches. Before you begin, these are the rules. Okay, you're going to arm wrestle for 1 minute. Each time you win, you can win as many times as you want, as you can. Each time you win, you get a point. Okay. Now, the two people in this room with the highest point score, they win. So what you see is especially, amongst the guys, you hear that as soon as you say go, you hear the grunt. Everybody's just like going against each other. Now, what happens is it takes about 5-10 seconds, and it's usually two people who are friendly with each other suddenly each let the other win, and they just pile up the points, right? So what we've taken, and then they both win because, everybody's at 1, 2, or 3, and they're at like 60 apiece because they just were letting everybody win. So what happens in that situation is we've proven that we can take what we inherently and always have known as to be a versus game. There's one winner and one loser. We've changed the rules a little bit to ensure there are two winners, and that it could be the two people playing as teammates as opposed to being in versus game. So that's a really cool one if you could do, or even just discuss it. And we have that a video resource for that included as well.
And just to kind of build on this, and I don't know if this is the right place to share this, but sometimes the outcome we want isn't win-win. Sometimes we want to just win and the other team just lose. Like this is really like, and this ties into the strategies, about the conflict strategies that we talked about previously. So when we're coaching our participants, we can emphasize that, obviously, like from a conflict resolution perspective, I think we can probably agree that a win-win is ideal, but not every relationship demands a win-win scenario. Like if somebody cuts you off in the drive-through, maybe you just let them have it, right? Maybe you take the L on that one. They can go forward. Maybe they buy you a coffee at the end. Who knows? You might get a conciliation prize. But the point that I'm trying to make is that we want to consider the outcome in the planning.
Right. And it just reminds me of that quote. The movie escapes me at the moment, but sometimes when you win, you lose. Sometimes when you lose, you win. And sometimes when you tie, you either win or lose. And I don't remember, but I remember it being a comedy. So I'm not going to recommend it just in case it's one of those comedies that we shouldn't see anymore, but I loved it. Okay. So let's continue into the other worksheet. What do you understand to be an outcome for each? Right? Conflict outcomes and the associated impacts. What would happen if it's a win-win? What would happen? Play out the scenario for you, for them. Again, we're establishing empathy. We're establishing the importance of the relationship and the task. And as you said, Chris, it doesn't always have to be win-win. That is not the ideal. The ideal is the outcome should maximize and optimize the resolution for both parties. That's not necessarily a win-win, right? Maybe this is something they shouldn't even be involved in. So that's a lose-lose, right? The task is no longer a part of it. It's how we define what winning is and how we define what losing is. And that's a great point, Chris. So here are the points for preparing and engaging in a difficult conversation. I think we have to work on the numbering, right? In this, because they can't all be 1 or can't all be 5. So you know what, I'm going to blame I'm going to blame me for this one.
Oh,
But
Thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome.
It's good on the website though.
yes,
So-
and in
I
the
just-
in the Google Maps or in the Google Docs version, it's the sequence is correct as well.
So I blame, do you know what? Let's blame Bill Gates. Everybody else
Yeah.
does. Microsoft.
This was Microsoft pure and simple.
Take it slow. That's the whole point. Again, it's about being curious and being thoughtful. Set the environment. Identify your goal. What is it? Right? And a goal isn't a position. By setting your goal, it's not identify your goal, mean this has to be the outcome. No. The outcome could be something like, I want to get into an amiable conversation that we both feel that we took a part of, regardless of what the outcome is. That's more in the collaborative spirit, right? Be curious, develop questions from your reflections, because you've been reflecting throughout the entire thing. Communicate and repeat. Again, we can go back into past trainings where we start talking about the I statements. Reciprocate. Reciprocate, another word for empathy, right? Be open, be vulnerable. Listen, be present, listen with eyes, body, and heart. Brainstorm, right? Collaboration. The whole idea here is, instead of it being a versus game, instead of it being, I'm now in a conflict with Chris, it's Chris and I are now in conflict with an item that needs to be fixed. And both of us, two heads are better than one, can now fix that, whether it is the boundaries in our relationship, whether it is whatever it may be. And that is an ideal way of looking at almost any situation, right? I can be on one side of this argument and you can be on this side of this argument. We don't have to agree. We can just understand where they're coming from. Right? Now, again, are all these tools, should they be used always? Not when your safety is on the line, right? Sometimes walking away, sometimes protecting yourself. We're saying these are effective tools used in, depending on where your relationship is at and what's important, but your safety is the most important thing. People start to heal the moment they feel heard. One of my main presentations that I do, like corporately, is listening to be heard. When you show that you're willing to do that, because it's really funny, and I think one of the best aspects of human nature is how competitive we are. I know that probably doesn't sound good, but it's how competitive we are. So if I'm really nice to you, I'm super empathic to you, you're going to prove you're better. And you're going to listen more, and you're going to be more empathic to me, because that's sort of the nature, the nature of competitiveness. So when you really put a lot towards a relationship that's worth having, that is healthy, right? Then it's amazing the return on that investment that you get. So what are we asking for now? We're asking you to scan this QR code and give us some feedback. I am going to open it up to everybody. Obviously, we have this thank you page as well with links to the ADN, where we're going to have to fix the link for the resolution day, or hopefully we can fix the site so we take off that Weebly. Hey, Cindy. But we'll figure that out. I invite you to start asking questions or having some input into, I think this part is good. Maybe elaborate on that. And then we'll get into that discussion that we might make that change for the presentation materials, or we'll suggest, this is where we feel comfortable. This is where we're going to stick. Now, if you would like to add that for yours, here's some suggestions on how to maximize that. So I open it up to the attendees to ask any questions, make any comments, ask any questions. Again, let me just reshare the screen just so you guys, we do ask that you go to the scan the facilitator feedback QR code here and provide us with as much feedback as you possibly can. And we look forward to getting to that conversation. If you have any questions as well, please feel free to email us. Cindy provided the email earlier, and we will do everything we possibly can to make sure that those questions are answered and considered. So does anybody need me to take them off to allow them to speak? Fantastic. Bye-bye. No, just kidding. All right, Lisa. Okay, so now how do I do this? I go back to here. Lisa, yes. You're just on mute. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, because I got distracted by a question, a work-related question. So if you answered this, my apologies if this is redundant. Is it possible to, or are we able to receive all of this information now? And is it possible to, so we can review it, like, so I can go through it and provide feedback? Yeah.
We're going to let Cindy take this one.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, everything is posted, even the interest
Oh, it is
sheet that you
posted.
just asked
Okay.
about. Yeah,
Great.
it's all under 2024. Like when you go to the website,
Okay.
now the domain had to change. So I'm going to make sure that the domain is posted again in the chat for people. Okay, so they're not having any fun with that. I'm going to put it right into the chat right now. But under the 2024 presentations, all materials are posted.
Excellent. Thank you.
And
Cindy.
of course, the Google Slide's too big, so it's linked.
So actually, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and show you how to access that. So if we're at conflict resolution day, again, conflictresolutionday.weebly.com. You go to 2024 and this is the page for that. And then presentations is right here. Host a presentation for yourself. And here are all the presentation materials. Okay, it's right on the website. Download it, use it.
And Don, the link in green, that's where the slides are.
That's right.
They were bigger. Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Okay, are there any other questions? Chris, you know, when we're going to, because Chris and I are actually going to be presenting this together. And so there's going to be a lot more interplay. We're going to get into some discussions. Talk about some of the polls that we were considering doing and at which kind of point that you were going to insert them.
Yeah, I think we're talking about polls during the story for the McDonald's story as a way to be interactive, especially if people are presenting in a virtual setting. So you can like add like what do you think this person's conflict strategy is, A, B, C. They can interact with the technology in that regard. We were thinking about polls in another space too, if I'm not mistaken. I think
because I think that before we get into explaining that these are just strategies, that we were just going to introduce the 5 terms, you know, competing, avoiding, accommodating, and say, which one do you think you are? Just to then really break that that thought that I am a competing person, or this person that I know is an avoiding person. They're not. Right. This is about the strategy employed during conflict. And we're going to really hammer that home.
Yeah.
But the feedback I do want to ask, and I want to go back to you, Chris, but the feedback that I really want from you, can you as facilitators see the story that we're trying to tell, how we're trying to break presumptions safely, and how we're trying to provide good tools, again, with the caveat that they should be used, how they could be used, when they should be used, and how safely they could be used. So I look forward to maybe some of those comments in the chat. But Chris, back to you.
Yeah, no, just the other to your point, and thanks for the reminder, Don. Like, it's a time saver as well, right? Like, especially in that conflict strategy, if you're doing a presentation virtually, how are you going to fill the space while someone goes through a 15-question questionnaire that might take a few minutes? It might be good to just pick a couple of points and ask them to evaluate 1 or 2 or 3 of the lines, and just to give a sneak peek as to what folks default or what they select as their default conflict strategy is. Those are kind of the ones that jump to mind off the top of my head. But obviously, we're open to suggestions and feedback from the audience. Do you guys think there's other opportunities for us to have fun with the content for the conflict resolution day?
Perfect. Cindy, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, one of the things I did when I did the conflict strategies was I did either table talks if I was facilitating in person and there were a few people around the table, asked one to going to lead the questions. It depended on the audience. Another group, I was with a group of tradesmen, and what we did was we actually did it all out loud, all together. We read 15 questions, everyone went, and it was almost entertaining, to be honest with you. They really enjoyed their time together doing it. They felt safe, clearly. They treated it right. So any way you can get your audience to engage in any one of these is the win-win for everybody learning.
Yeah, there's a lot of material here. There's a lot to take in. And again, this has been adapted, you know, from worksheets that were much longer. And so when we start talking about future trainings that we have available, we can go into more depth. But again, the purpose of the train the trainer and of conflict resolution day is to the layman, right? We can all sit down and agree or disagree over specifics of this and its efficacy over a coffee anytime. And I think that really inspires each of us to learn and grow. But when we start talking about these concepts, this is to people that do not have any formal education in conflict management. Right. One of the things that I realized as I was able to be a facilitator at high schools with peer mediation and skills training is that these ideas that we're asking people to incorporate, it becomes as people are introduced to it, they have to be able to have a very slow, welcoming way into it, right? Because when mediators get along, one of my jokes is a bunch of mediators in a room can get along once they achieve consensus on having consensus on the definition of consensus, and then they're able to sort of proceed. So when you're introducing these things, you know, telling people that they have the opportunity to get out of their reactions and into their thoughtfulness and logically process an emotional situation, it is a lot. So we do want to keep it basic. We do want to keep it straightforward. And then we hope that further reading, which we have here, we mentioned William Ury, we mentioned, you know, other aspects. So if this is your entryway into some conflict management, here are the next steps that you can also take. And that's also an important aspect. So I think that with this, we are going to end the train the trainer session. We obviously are going to be very responsive to any emails we receive from you regarding the questions. I want to thank you, Janine. I want to thank you, Cindy, and I want to thank you, Chris, for being with us today. This was a lot of fun, as it always is. And we look forward to having you facilitate your own on October the 17th. Now it doesn't have to be at 11:30. We're going to do ours at 11:30, from 11:30 to 1 o'clock on October 17th Mountain Time. No, sorry, 12 to 1:30.
Correct.
Right, 12 to 1:30 on October 17th Mountain Time. We're going to do our very best to then post it on YouTube. One of the things other people have done is use our presentation, show it, and then do Q&A. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can facilitate this. But again, I want to thank you all so very much for being here. And I'll turn it over to Cindy.
I just want to put a shout out to two events that will be upcoming. We have a really cool innovations committee led by Janine and Paulette, and we will be doing two media events. First one will be coming up on October the 8th with Shay Gannam on 6:30 CHED in Edmonton and QR in Calgary. That's October the 8th at 11:30 a.m. We invite you to tune in. We will be promoting our Conflict Resolution Day, and our next one will be Real Talk with Ryan Jesperson on International Conflict Resolution Day itself at 9 a.m. So what a fun-filled day to spend the day with this group on October 17th. Anyway, tune in.
Perfect. Again, thank you, everybody. And yeah, this is a real joy. I find every year that we do this, it's just so much fun. The collaboration, the work from a colonel to a seed to a small plant, and now to this presentation, which I think we all stand by and are very, very proud of. So thank you everybody for your contribution. Thank you everybody for attending today.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Don.